While a lot of conversation has been made this offseason around the Chicago Bulls going younger with their roster, one big question remains for the Chicago Bulls is, will head coach Billy Donovan see the Bulls through this rebuild period, or is it only a matter of time before Billy Donovan loses his taste for where the Chicago Bulls are going? We'll talk a little bit about that, built around comments from DeMar DeRozan. We're also going to talk about Buzelis growing as a player and a interesting trade idea that would send Nikola Vucvic to the Los Angeles Lakers. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off with this. First of all, shout out to my boy Wynton Mahorn, because I waited. I baited him. I knew he was going to do it. Wynton Mahorn, I knew he did not watch the full interview, because when we were talking about DeMar DeRozan's comments on Kobe White, the young players, Wynton Mahorn, my brother, I love him, but he hates Billy Donovan, mentioned how, well, you know, one thing you didn't hear DeMar DeRozan talk about was Billy Donovan. That actually is not true at all. Billy, in the interview on Podcast P with Paul George, DeMar DeRozan said this in regards to Billy Donovan. I love Billy D, man. Billy D is one heck of a person and coach. My time there, the way that he embraced me, the way that he allowed me to step in and be the leader that I was. He's a great coach, great guy. I feel like he doesn't get the props that he fully deserves. He's definitely underrated for sure. I wish him nothing but the best. He allowed me to be myself coming to Chicago. He made it easy for all of us. And in the same interview, Paul George even kind of echoed those sentiments in regards to Billy Donovan. And that really shouldn't be too surprising. Well, I'm not the biggest Billy Donovan guy. I'm not necessarily the hater of Billy Donovan like my boy Wynton is. And let me be clear. I understand why Wynton hates Billy Donovan. But I think that when you look at it, Billy Donovan is a player that, if you are the star player on that team, or if you are going to be his favorite weapon, you probably have a much different view on Billy Donovan than other players, right? One of the things that kind of contrast how DeMar DeRozan views Billy Donovan is reportedly the relationship between Billy Donovan and Zach LaVine, one that isn't really, reportedly the best. Even though Billy Donovan flew out to L.A. over the course of this offseason to spend some time with Zach LaVine, maybe even kind of try to fix that relationship a little bit. When you look at how DeMar DeRozan has played for coach like Greg Popovich, he's played for Dwayne Casey, he's played for guys like that, even Paul George, who's played for Tyronn Lue as well. The fact that these guys are talking really glowingly about Billy Donovan speak to how some of the players view Billy Donovan. Now, that is a very big, stark difference to how a lot of Bulls fans view Billy Donovan, and myself included, right? Like I said, I'm not a hater of Billy Donovan. I'm not necessarily a huge lover of Billy Donovan either. I think Billy Donovan can be a good coach. I think that, calling him a horrible basketball coach just isn't realistic. He's not that. But that does not mean he's good for this team. Every good coach is not good for the team. Even some great coaches, which I will not make a case for Billy Donovan be a great coach, because he's not that, in my opinion. But even every great coach isn't great for every team or every makeup of a certain roster. So I think that plays a big part into it. But a lot of people, we see the comments. It's a Bulls channel, so of course we see the comments of, oh, he's a college coach. Oh, he needs to do this, all that. And I think Billy Donovan is just a coach that we've seen it throughout his career in the NBA. He's better when he has a point guard playing at a high level. That is why, finding that next point guard for them, and maybe even why the Bulls may have targeted like a Josh Giddey, right? Because when you have a point guard that's playing really well, Billy Donovan's system looks completely night and day different. So that plays a part into it. But I use that to segue into this. As far as the Bulls going a different route with their roster, it only matters so much as the coach that you have as well. And the question here then becomes is Billy Donovan going to embrace a rebuild of sorts for the Chicago Bulls? He's been a coach that in prior years, he left the OKC Thunder, which had talent on it. And like I said, now that you look at it, had you just waited 3 years, you would have been right back with the championship contender. But he has not really shown the desire to be the type of head coach that goes through a rebuilding period. He's a win-now coach. And when the Bulls brought him in, it kind of signified that the Bulls were going to try to win now. Now, they sold it as we're going to build through the draft, we're going to build organically, we're going to do this over time. And with Billy Donovan's history of being a college coach, you would think that development would be one of the things that he does extremely well. And some people, have different views on how Billy Donovan develops versus how he not. Some people look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, give him that. They give him a little bit of Lou Dort, right, as far as players that he's developed. Kobe White, it's back and forth on how you view how much of Billy Donovan has been a part of Kobe White's development, or how much is it him going out and working with dribble too much, getting with shooting coaches, those type of things. Ayo Dosunmu, a player that Billy Donovan did play early into his rookie year, but, some people also look at, hey, Ayo puts in a lot of work in the offseason as well. But either way, there's some doubts around that. The severity of that, we can have a conversation about at a different point. But is Billy Donovan going to embrace the Bulls possibly being bad for long? Now, some people could say, and more reactionary Bulls fans can look at that and say, well, we've been getting worse every single year, hey. So Billy Donovan kind of has to embrace it because he's been part of it. But I think that team, they still had the goals, right? They still had the objectivity of trying to say that, hey, no, we're competing for a playoff spot, not just a play-in, a playoff spot. And now with this team going a younger direction, if Vooch, if Zach LaVine are eventually moved, how does that change that direction? And that's the thing where you hear the Bulls are like hoping that one of these young players make another step on top of Kobe White making another step. And maybe that puts this Bulls team in being above where a lot of kind of analysts and odds makers have the Bulls right now. But Billy Donovan with 2 years left on his contract and the Bulls going younger now, I would say this. Hopefully Billy Donovan is invested in the development, because I could tell you what, if he's not, and let's say that he does become that guy, like it shifts from DeMar DeRozan to Zach LaVine, or from DeMar DeRozan to Kobe White, where it's just focused on just getting these guys shots and putting them in the right positions and not necessarily developing these younger guys better than what he has done, that could set the Bulls on this rebuild back 2 years. Now, one could say as well that if the Bulls do somehow get some draft lottery luck and get Ace Bailey, get a Cooper Flag, get whoever you have at the highest on your board. By the way, Hugo Gonzalez, somebody that Todd pointed out, the more I watch of his tape, the more and more I love Hugo Gonzalez. He's going to be somebody that I watch a lot during this offseason. But with that being said, is that it just gets to the point where if you don't have a coach that's bought into your direction, it can severely hurt the first couple of years of that direction. So hopefully Billy Donovan is bought in. And if he's not, maybe the Bulls do, with 1 year left on Billy Donovan's contract, because he's going to be the coach this year. Maybe they do decide to make a change. If we go through this season and we see, hey, yeah, these young guys, maybe they did take a step, but we're just not that good of a basketball team. We kept our top 10 pick easily, and we don't know if that's going to change even with adding a top 10 talent to this draft. And maybe Billy Donovan does come to the front office, much like he did in OKC, and just comes to the realization of, maybe we're not at the point where this is where I want to be as a head coach. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but I do think that as long as Billy Donovan is your head coach, how much he buys in, how much he's invested into this new path that you're going on severely matters. And you cannot overlook that point at all. And many Bulls fans aren't, right? Because regardless of how you look at the talent of a Josh Giddey, regardless of how you look at your expectations for Kobe White coming into this year, regardless of how you view Miles Buzelis and going forward into his NBA career, all these things play off into the fact of the matter is that if your head coach, and we've seen it, right? Monty Williams, the Detroit Pistons made him the highest paid coach in the year of the NBA, of the league. And it was clear he wasn't invested into those young guys. When you have to go to a coach 3 times to get them to accept your job, it kind of points there. And then the new GM came in, realized that, and they moved a different path. If your coach is not bought into your talent, if he's not bought into the direction of the front office, if the front office and the coaching staff aren't aligned, then that is almost just as bad as picking the wrong guy in the draft, because then you can't truly evaluate your talent because your coach doesn't believe in them. And I'm not saying that he doesn't. For all I know, Billy Donovan was ecstatic about the Bulls drafting Miles Buzelis. For all I know, Billy Donovan was ecstatic about the Chicago Bulls getting Josh Giddey. For all I know, Billy Donovan is sitting here the last 3 months of this offseason cooking up an offensive system because he believes so much in how Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, and others can work as a team and as a unit. He could have been doing that. I don't know. I'm not in those rooms. But if he's not, and he's not invested, it could really set this thing off on a terrible path. And you're starting to see it, like, even with winning teams, right? Hearing that, like, Mike Malone and the Denver Nuggets front office and Mike Malone as their head coach aren't necessarily in agreement on where that roster is going. And they have a former 2-time MVP on their roster, right? So, like, it's hugely important, and that's part of the reason the Bulls front office has been so invested in Billy Donovan, is because up until this point, via what we've been reported, is that they have been on the same page as far as, working in tandem, right? Working collaboratively. And hopefully that does continue as long as Billy Donovan's here. Not to say that I want to see Billy Donovan be the head coach of the Chicago Bulls for another 5 years or whatever else, but for the time he's here, if Billy Donovan is not locked in and invested, if you have a detached head coach that doesn't believe in what the front office is doing, that's hugely detrimental to the development and the evaluation of the young players that you have on this team. And that's all I can say on that. And again, could this be me worrying about something that could not end up being a problem? Absolutely, right? I want to be clear in saying that this could not be a problem at all when it's all said and done. But if it is, and I'm saying this, if it is, it could be ugly. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Now, with that said, we're going to go ahead and move into the next topic. One of the overarching questions around the Chicago Bulls team, as well as with Zach LaVine and Zach LaVine's future here with the Chicago Bulls, is what's going to happen with Nikola Vucvic. We have another interesting trade idea when it comes to Nikola Vucvic that we're about to get into. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you guys about this. I am in the PCL, that is the Players' Choice Debate League, over on the Players' Choice YouTube channel. I've been in that league. I'm now in the playoffs, right? Had my first playoff victory against Pincer last week. This upcoming Sunday at 6:45 p.m., your boy will be debating Dion from Ohio in this debate. If I win this debate, I go into the Final Four. It would mean nothing more to me, especially being on a platform like Players' Choice that is not familiar with me. If you guys can come out, show out, support your boy over on Players' Choice, because, hey, when I first started doing this debate league, they did not know who your boy was, and they were doubtful in the comment section. Now, as I've now won 3 out of 4 battles, they're starting to understand who the hell Haize is, but I would love for you guys to be there to support me. I'm putting up this image now. Make sure you guys show up there to support me Sunday, 6:45 p.m. I'll be debating Dion from Ohio. Make sure you guys tune in. But with that said, I want to get into this trade idea as far as sending Nikola Vucvic to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, this, of course, we've heard a lot about the Lakers and the reported interest in Zach LaVine. We even got confirmation from DeMar DeRozan on the podcast episode that he was on, as far as him saying that the Lakers were a team that were really interested in bringing him in. Now, if the Lakers also do need some big man help, and I think that's clear, that's evident. Anthony Davis has been a player that doesn't necessarily like to play center. He will, if they can bring in Nikola Vucvic. And this article presents it as that Nikola Vucvic would bring in some ability to hit corner threes, provide some spacing. I don't know how convinced they're going to be on that one, and that playing with Anthony Davis and LeBron James could actually help his shooting come back to more so what it was with the Orlando Magic. And so, the question of would Nikola Vucvic really move the needle for that Los Angeles Lakers team, that's a debatable thing, but they presented an interesting trade, and one that I think the Bulls could take an interest in, but we'll talk about why and why not. So it's that the Bulls are receiving Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, and 3 second-round picks in exchange for Nikola Vucvic. Now, this isn't, again, it's not a terrible deal. Getting 3 second-round picks when the Bulls are able to get no picks in some of their other deals, it does make me kind of, okay, cool. You're getting some assets back, which is something that the Chicago Bulls could want, right? As far as, especially with them going younger, them trying to build through the draft. If you get draft picks, again, it's not just about necessarily keeping those draft picks, but it's a 2025, 27, and a 2030 second-round picks in that. That gives you more assets that you can conclude if you want to move up. And so Gabe Vincent has a contract with 2 years remaining of $10 million and $11 million. Jared Vanderbilt has a contract, 2 years remaining on his contract of $10 million and $13 million. So their contracts combined do equal Nikola Vucvic. The problem, Bulls have no open roster spots to absorb another contract and sending out Vooch. So that would mean that another player would have to be included or rerouted to another team to make this deal work. Keep that in mind. Or if the Bulls do, waive like Ernolot Batum, who has a non-guaranteed contract to facilitate this type of deal. But again, this deal probably wouldn't happen until during the season. At that point, Batum would probably be guaranteed. So that's another thing there. But ultimately, would this be the type of deal that the Chicago Bulls would want for Nikola Vucvic? Gabe Vincent, who can provide some point guard depth for you, maybe, if you need it, right? You still got Ayo Dosunmu here. You still got Lonzo Ball, who's trying to make his return back, those type of things. So there. But Jared Vanderbilt is an interesting case scenario for a couple of different reasons. Vanderbilt is the type of player who, for the Lakers, he plays some 4, he plays some 5. This is a guy that not too long ago, a lot of Bulls fans were saying that they would rather have him than Patrick Williams on the team, so I understand that. Now, Vanderbilt has kind of lost his starting role to Rui Hachimura. That's a player that it seems like the Lakers are more invested in them going forward. Jared Vanderbilt's still only 25 years old, who would kind of fit the Bulls' new, younger timeline, 6'8", 214 pounds, can play multiple positions, can guard multiple positions, but then you also start getting into the injury concern. Since the 2021-22 season, where he played 74 games, the highest amount of games that he's played since that time is 52. The last 2 seasons, he played 26 and 29 games respectively, so less than 60 games totaled over the last 2 seasons as well. That could be one of the reasons why the Lakers are also willing to move on from him. Now, if he's healthy, you're getting a player that can absolutely defend multiple positions. Now, the scoring prowess of Jared Vanderbilt has always kind of been more potential than what it has been in reality. That's just the way that it's been. So you got to look at that as well, right? So again, and the thing in this that you have to look at also is the fact that, and partially you would think in moving Nikola Vucvic, the Bulls would not be wanting to take back longer-term salary. You don't get any salary cap relief on this. Both in the first year and the second years of their deals, they're basically the same length and same amount. Now, you're breaking that up over 2 players, so maybe you can include one of those guys in a subsequent deal, but it is the type of thing that you also have to look at of why the Bulls may not do that deal, because they're not really gaining anything as far as cap relief. They're not really gaining anything as far as, getting off money earlier. You're getting 2 picks back that are role players. One that has, both weren't healthy last season, right? Gabe Vincent wasn't healthy for that Lakers team. And one thing as well, with always former Miami Heat role players, they never quite have the same impact once they go to another team. So that may be some of the reasons why the Bulls would not do that type of trade. But I do think that Jared Vanderbilt still is an interesting name. The second-round picks are probably the biggest asset in that. And many Bulls fans are going to say, well, Vooch is still a top 15 center at minimum, right? Some people are going to try to make case for higher than that. Getting 3 second-round picks back for that and 2 role players, both who have not been healthy over the last year or so, that is what starts raising some questions for you, right? So it really depends on how eager the Bulls are to move off of Nikola Vucvic, which is something we still haven't quite really seen. And maybe that comes down to whatever happens with Jalen Smith and Nikola Vucvic, whatever happens there. So those are the type of things that you have to look at there. So, we'll end up seeing at the end of the day, it's all speculative, right? And so take all of this, these rumors, these speculations, take it all with a huge grain of salt, because it could all ultimately not mean a goddamn thing if we're just being 100% honest. So, but let me know what you guys think on that. Make sure you guys sound off down below. But one thing that I want to get into before we leave, and I kind of want to bring all this back in to refocus, because we've been talking a lot about a lot of different things over the last couple of weeks. But the Bulls drafted a player that was projected to go in the top 5 by most, not every, mock draft this past year in Modest Buzelis. And while, I've even seen some people in the comment section say, oh, Modest is going to be a bust. I don't know where you get that from. Some people just want to say shit, and they just sound stupid, right? But with that said, because a lot of y'all were still calling Kobe White a bust and saying the Bulls should have traded him 3 years ago. Now look at you, right? So with that said, Paul George said something interesting about Modest Buzelis in the interview with DeMar DeRozan, saying this: I also like the young guy Chicago just drafted. Bro, he's going to be a hooper. I watched him in Summer League. I actually got to chop it up with him when we were in Vegas during Summer League, and he told me, man, you're one of my favorite players. I watched a ton of your highlights. I base my workouts after you. I try to emulate stuff you do, and he was tall as shit, towering me. Paul George saying that Modest Buzelis is even taller and longer than Paul George. He might be one of the up-and-coming stars. Very soon, he can hoop. He got game. And I wanted to put it in perspective, right? And this is based off potential. And not all potential is realized, so this doesn't mean it's going to go that way. But while Modest Buzelis has not been a good defender yet, right, is that he has the makeup to be a good defender. While Modest Buzelis hasn't been a good three-point shooter in the G League, he's actually a great three-point shooter in high school. Again, the mechanics are right. You want to get him with the right shooting coach. If you develop him correctly, you can see him turning into an above-average three-point shooter. Modest Buzelis right now has the chance to not just be a building block for the Chicago Bulls, but he has the chance to be the type of player that we look at and say that this was a change of direction as far as getting the Bulls the necessary talent injection that they needed. Modest Buzelis is still, and listen, like I said, put some respect on Kobe White's name because he's done it so far. put some respect on Ayo Dosunmu's name because Ayo had a great season last year, especially coming off his sophomore year. He had a great season last year. But put some respect. Josh Giddey, tons of potential. Averaged 17, 8, and 6 at one point in his career. But Modest Buzelis, still, this front office better hope that Modest Buzelis works out because he offers the best chance to dramatically raise the future ceiling of the Chicago Bulls team. I'm not saying put a lot of pressure on him his rookie year. Not saying that. But if Modest Buzelis hits, right, I've said it, going into last draft, it's important that the Bulls start hitting on their draft picks. If Modest Buzelis is a hit for AK and Eversley, this front office, that is something that's going to be important. I said it a couple of episodes ago. AK has not shown an ability to draft anybody better than Kobe White. Still, the best player that we drafted in the last few years was still done by guard packs. That's Kobe White. That's not to say that Patrick Williams still doesn't have potential. That's not to say that Julian Phillips still doesn't have potential. But Modest Buzelis is the next best chance for this front office to prove that they can get high-level talent in this draft, and you better hope that they hit on it. And if he does, because people are noticing the skill set that Modest Buzelis has, yeah, he didn't shoot a great efficiency from the field, and he may not his rookie year. But if Modest Buzelis develops, that's the next, as of right now, maybe that changes in next year's draft. If the Bulls keep their top 10 pick, get the right guy, that could become the next great chance for the Bulls to get talent. But again, Modest Buzelis right now, the future invested, and they better be investing in Modest Buzelis. And not to say that it's just Modest, right? But when you look at them bringing in two former coaches that were heads of player development, and you added them in Dan Craig and Wes Unseld Jr., and you look at the guys that they developed, to me, that points towards the Bulls focusing more on development. I'm not saying it's just Modest. You also got the player development staff that already worked with Kobe, that worked with Ayo, that were a big part, that the players gave credit for how they were able to perform last season. The development of Modest Buzelis is hugely important to the future of this team, and let's hope that he hits. But guys, let me know what you guys think on all the topics down below. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.